Hey guys, this is Chris, and I wanted to do a video on changing out the bearings on my 2007 Cougar fifth wheel. We had picked up used about 1.5 years ago, and I just wasn't sure if they did maintenance on the bearings. And from what I was reading, it's a good idea to check and make sure the bearings are good and they're properly greased. I always greased up the bearings through the zergs before we'd ever take it out, but I just never really understood how it all worked inside. So being a nerd, I thought, well, I'll just take it apart and see what it looks like. What we're gonna do is I'll just start and get this one cranked off and kind of show you how I figured it out. It's not rocket science. I can tell you it has not been that big of a challenge. I don't know what the dealerships charge to do this, but I would highly recommend anybody that has just the basic tools, the ability to do this on their own. I think you could probably save a lot of money, and you know it's done right. So highly recommend it. So off we go. First thing is, this is just a dust cap that covers everything, and it's very, very simple to take off. You just beat it with a rubber mallet a couple places and it just pops right off. So I'll show you that real quick. All it takes is just a little bit on the rubber mallet, and you beat it a couple different ways. Ironically, that was the hardest one of all four, so it's because I have a video. Pretty easy, a little gooey, not too bad. Definitely get your gloves on, because between this and the brake cleaner, there's a lot of chemicals and stuff that are pretty gnarly, that you don't need in your skin. I don't mind being dirty, but just the chemicals and stuff, the cancer risks and stuff like that, it's just not worth it. So these gloves are awesome. I ended up having to get the thicker, I think these are 7mm gloves over at Harbor Freight, and they work out really, really well. So now you've got the nut on here, and there is a cotter pin in through the nut, really easy to get out. You just got to straighten it up. And then it will come right out with a little finesse. It's always fun to finesse these. There you go, cotter pin out, and the locks does wonders. I don't have a socket or anything, or wrench that's as big as this thing, so channel locks to the rescue. Piece of cake. Just throw that in the little bin. So really, that's the hard part. I usually clean this off a little bit, and then all you do now is you grab onto the hub and just slide it out. Now, I try to put this here. It's gonna knock out the outer bearings and the washer when you pull this off the spindle. So I try to catch it. The first one I did, it dropped in all over the ground, so that was less fun. There it goes. And then you just take this and you take it over to where you're going to clean it. And if you look at this, this is just like the other one was. So I have another brake that is just encased in grease. I don't know if you can make that out that well, but it's just completely nasty. Let's see if I can zoom. Just completely nasty in there. And somebody that's much more educated than I probably could be like, oh, you can clean that off with brake fluid and stuff like that, or brake cleaner, and call it happy. But since I've already bought the new brakes, all this comes off super, super easy. There's 5 bolts, and this whole thing will come off. You got to cut the power to it, but it'll come off, and then the new one just goes back on, and it's just ridiculously easy. So highly recommend. If you have any question on those, go to eTrailer, pick them up. They're about 50 bucks a wheel. Pretty decent investment. All right, so we moved over here. I've got a little bench set up with some of the cleaning stuff that I was doing and using. And the first thing you want to do is you take the hub, and if you notice, this hub is just caked in grease. We're going to have to clean it out thoroughly to make sure everything's good with it. But the first thing is, as you saw when I pulled this off the axle, the inner bearing has popped out along with the washer right after that nut that holds everything in. I've got that in my bucket. The next thing that I do is right here is the rear seal, and right in here is the inner bearings. So the next step is to get those out, and to do that, there's a lot of ways to do it. I ended up going over to O'Reilly and picking up a seal puller. It was like $7, no big deal, and it helped out. When I did it with my cousin, we banged it out with the punch, and that worked out too. So you don't need specialty tools. You're not gonna salvage this seal anyway. I already picked up off of Amazon a new seal to replace it. So all you have to do is put this little tool into right in between the bearing and the seal, and you just kind of bang it. It's mildly gratifying to bang stuff, and eventually it'll pop itself out. And just work it around. True to form, this one was the most difficult out of all of them as well. And if you notice, the little wire that holds it on and everything has come off, which is probably why everything got grease on the inside. That seal was breached, and then as the wheel rotates, it dumps the grease all into the brake and stuff, and you saw. So what I'm learning is half of the braking system on my trailer was non-functional because both seals had been breached. Really good lesson. I'm taking it to heart that this is something I'm going to do every winter as maintenance. So here's the inner bearing, and I haven't figured out an awesome way to really get these things cleaned. I know part shops and stuff have that sonic cleaner that they can put it in, and it just kind of soaks it and then shakes it off with that and gets them all spotless and stuff like that. But I don't have that, and I wasn't going to buy it for this project because I didn't think it was necessary. So basically, just paper toweling it. I'm on my second roll of paper towels, but not a big deal. So what I do is I just get the majority of the grease off, and then I'd spray it with brake cleaner and get more off. And then once I get most of it off, I've got a little air compressor gun down there, and I spray it with the brake cleaner, spray inside, where's it at? Spray inside here with the brake cleaner, and then I take the gun and just kind of spray it off more and more, and get it nice and clean. And then I inspect it. So when you inspect your bearings, I look Every single one of these I rotate once it's clean. It rotates freely. I check and see if there's any kind of pits or anything to it, or discoloration, and see if anything, if it has any kind of wear marks or anything like it, then I would replace them. These bearings were made in China. If I was to replace them, so far all 4 wheels have looked good, so I'm not going to replace them at this time. But if I was to replace them, I'd replace them with US made, a lot higher quality standards and tests and stuff. So I'd feel a little bit better hauling something with that. And then what I would also do is, if there was just minor wear on these, after I replaced them, I'd probably throw a set in a box and throw it in my toolbox for the camper or on the truck. In that way, if I was out on the road and something happened, I'd have a spare set that would kind of get me to the next place where I could have them replaced. So another good thing that I read was, if you change your bearings, the little metal, there's a little metal collar, it's called a race or a cup, sits inside here. You do have to bang those out. I ended up getting off of Amazon a kit to bang them, to push them back in, and I got a brass punch that I haven't had to use yet to pull them out, to bang them out. But if you get new bearings, I've read in a lot of different places and been told by some relatives of mine that are mechanics that you would replace the races as well. So just know that if you're going to do that, it's a little bit more work involved, and you have to buy both parts of that. You want to do that, and that way you have the confidence that everything's good. So all I'm going to do now is clean out all the excess grease, and then I'm going to take this outside, spray it good with the brake cleaner, clean it out probably 4 or 5 times, and then let it sit out in the sun, dry out. And then I'll come back in and clean off the bearings real good. And then the next thing would be repacking those bearings and get those ready to go. So I'll be back with that. So the next step I've got to do is pack the bearings with fresh grease. So for this, I ended up getting this Lucas Extra Duty Heavy Grease. I went ahead and picked up this bearing packing tool. When I was doing it with my cousin, we just did it by hand, and we just had a tub of this stuff, and we put it in our hands, and we just pushed the bearing down into the grease until it started oozing out the top. And then we flipped it over and greased it, or pushed it in there, and the grease was squirting everywhere. And it worked pretty well. But I was in the store, and I had visions that this would just make it so much easier and less messy. I was mistaken. I don't think it is any easier. In fact, I think it's a little harder overall. Hopefully it packs them just as good. I'm using it mainly because I bought it. So I guess there's a little bit of stubbornness to it. I bought it, so dang it, I'm going to use it, and we'll call it happy. So you put the bearing in there like so. I try to get it kind of even. It seems to like to kick off to the side a little bit. Get it in there. And then you just take your grease gun, which is actually on the other side of the trailer, and stick it on the Zerg and pump it until it goofs up out of this section here, the bottom of the bearing. I find that it takes, I don't know, 30 or 40 pumps to get the big bearing, the inner bearing, fully packed, and the outer bearing a lot less. But it's kind of a pain to sit there and pump, 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 pump. And at least with my current setup, it's not easy to hold it and then look and see if it's coming out. So I don't know if I'd recommend this. I think just the hand packing would be a little bit better. I even read another trick was put a big lump of the grease in a baggie and then put the bearing in the baggie and just work it that way so it's not going all over your hands and shirts and stuff like that. So that seemed to intrigue me as well. Maybe the next time I do this project, that's how I'll do it. I'm not sure if I'll use this little $7 tool again. So anyway, I'm gonna do that, and then we'll be ready to do the brakes. So thank you. Now you can start see it's squirking out the top. Interesting, all that cleaning I did. So this Lucas grease is green, and you can see it's still pushing out some black grease. That's the old grease. So I read that you're not supposed to mix the two, the old and the new. So I'll give it a couple more squirts. And hopefully that'll push out all that black grease out and make it mostly green, which I think it did. So just to get that black out, just go ahead and call it good. Throw that in the trash can. And probably give it a couple more so that everything's good. Grease is cheap, and I've already got it hooked up, so. Okay, so we're back. So then just take this tool off. I'd say probably 40 pumps to get it gooing up through. So on that hand, it's pretty good. And like I had said, the outer bearing is a lot smaller, and it pumps up a lot quicker. So that one's not bad. Had I started with that one, it would have been fine. So this is the original. I didn't replace this one at all. It's good to go. All right, on to the seal. So I picked up these seals, double lip seal. And I just put it there, I put a little lube around it. And then I just drive it in. And there it is. And then this is ready to go on this side. Now, the other thing I've read is you want to put a bunch of grease in the middle of this before you put it up on the axle. So I'll just squirt in a bunch of this, and then I'll get the outer bearing and the washer ready to go. And hopefully this is helpful. It's been a crazy learning experience for me, so I hope this helps somebody through this process.